We're back in full swing, baby, with Wednesday night featuring the first full slate of NHL action. The Wednesday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast kicks it off with 5 bold predictions for the upcoming season. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back inside the lab, everybody, to your daily source for fantasy hockey news and soon-to-be betting breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, and I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. On this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Shout out, salute, and thank you so much for the first everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Even though I am struggling to spit out these words, I will not struggle to convey Steele and I's excitement. Hockey's back, baby. And on today's episode, we're going to spit off 5 bold predictions for the upcoming season, and it's going to lead to some fantasy angles that need to be covered. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Mr. Roden, you and I have a lot going on right now, but we're holding it down, and we're keeping true to our word. We do bold predictions every single season. I don't know. Usually mine are pretty crazy out in left field. I don't know how crazy these are, so maybe I'm copping out already with the not-so-bold predictions. However, over to you, my friend. Who you looking at first? Let's get after it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 2 from pretty much the same organization, at least. One player, one team. But I've got some bold predictions to make. Now, starting with my 5th prediction right now. You know how high I am on the Nashville Predators. I talk about them almost every single season. They're a dark horse for me. They can make a deep playoff run. That's my first bold prediction. They make it all the way to the Western Conference Finals.
Wow.
At least. There's a potential for them to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals as well.
This is spicy. I like it.
I really like this team. I mean, I like them bringing in Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, guys who have won Stanley Cup champions. They re-signed UC Saros. They get better on the blue line with Brady Shea. Again, this is a team that was top 10 in goals for. They were top 13 or top 12 in goals against last year, even with a struggling UC Saros. I love the making of this team. We've talked about the organization. We've talked about the GM and the work that they put in, handing that over to Barry Trotz. It's now he's at the helm. It's his decision-making to what this team does. And there's still some potential to get better before the trade deadline in March. So I'm really enjoying the look of this team. I'm really excited to see the season debut for the Nashville Predators and for them to get the season going, because they got multiple 40-goal scorers with Philip Forsberg, Steven Stamkos, potentially Jonathan Marchessault. So Roman Josi is another guy that I'll be talking about later in this episode as well. But that's my first bold prediction. Nashville Predators make it to the Western Conference Finals.
That is bold, and since we're talking about it, have a look at the Nashville Predators right now at plus 1,600 for the Stanley Cup champion. Hey, Steele, if you're buying into that narrative, that should be catching maybe $5, $10 of your money. Hey, Steven Stamkos is getting somewhat disrespected in fantasy circles. People talking about not expecting Stammer, disappointing season, maybe he's a regression candidate. I don't think I'm here for any of that discussion because we just haven't seen this team on the ice just yet. That might be an easier prediction, and I like that you are sticking to your guns on 100. So, if anything can be said about this Nashville team, Steele, it's this. They have one of the best goaltenders in the league, and we've seen this. This isn't rocket science. You need a goaltender to steal you at least 3 or 4 games, if not 1 or 2 series. And he can do that. Let's move on to my first bold prediction, and it's definitely the boldest one that I have. Auston Matthews is going to have to carry this Toronto Maple Leafs team, and let me explain. I understand all the hype. Joseph Woll, I think Biz Nasty was on Spit and Chicklets the other day talking about Joseph Woll for the Vezina. I know it's an improved blue line. This team is going to go as far as 34 carries it. He goes, they go. And that's why I'm looking at this as Matthews wins his 2nd Hart Trophy. And I believe if he wins this one, like I'm predicting, I think it's his 4th or 5th. Rocket Richard Trophy. This is a player that is so critically important to the success of his team that he has got to be in the mix for the Hart Trophy, just like he is every single season. He's improved his 200-foot game to the point where he not only brings it with shots and points and goals, 90-plus hits, 90-plus block shots. He's playing with a gritty edge. He's responsible with the biscuit, breaks up plays with the best of them. So I'll finish it off, Steele. Auston Matthews is going to win both trophies this year. He's done it before, so maybe this is, again, not so bold, but winning both trophies, especially when you got guys like McKinnon and obviously McDavid and other studs, Kucherov creeping around for these awards as well. Maybe it is spicy, but I could see it. And if the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to live up to all this hype, it's got to be number 34 at the helm.
Might as well toss a third trophy in there as well. He's going to win the Rocket, the Hart, and the Selke Trophy. No! I mean, that's a bold prediction right there with Auston Matthews, but I am absolutely here for it. You've got him winning the Rocket Richard. I have another player winning the Rocket Richard.
Oh, nice segue.
My boy, Kirill Kaprizov is going to have an unbelievable season for the Minnesota Wild. I have Kaprizov scoring 60-plus goals, and he's going to end up winning the Rocket Richard Trophy. Okay. He's going to play a full 82-game season. He's had 3 straight years of 40-plus goal seasons, 47, 40, and 46. He's had 108 points, 96 points. Hasn't played a full 82 games the last 2 years, but I'm expecting him to play all 82 at least for this to happen. And he's going to have to put this Minnesota Wild team on his back, on his shoulders, carry them to get into the playoffs if they want to be in the postseason once again. And he's going to have to score as many goals as possible. I have him having 60-plus goals for winning the Rocket Richard, and that's going to be my next bold prediction because he's been absolutely stellar. We talked about it. This is something that he's had to do by himself over the last couple of seasons since he's entered the NHL. He's still waiting for Matt Boldy to take that stepping out season. He's still waiting for Brock Faber to get into his gear. He's still waiting for another superstar to play with. Kirill Kaprizov has to do it himself. He's going to win the Rocket.
277 shots on net last year, Steele. You and I like to bring up, we'd like to see players shoot the puck more. He might fit that bill to a T the most out of any guy in the NHL, considering how lethal that release is. 277 shots. I want to see another 100 on top of that number, Steele. I want to see him much closer to like 350, get that number up there, and then I could see 60-plus goals. And let me just bring up the odds here for the Hart Trophy, for the Rocket Richard, sorry. Minus 115 for Poppy, plus 550 for David Pastrnak, then Draisaitl at plus 750, and as well your boy Kirill the Bill, plus 750. So he is going to need to be that good. If the Minnesota Wild are going to make the playoffs, there's another player that I'd like to talk about who might be important for that push. We'll talk about that after the break. We'll talk about the rest of our bold predictions after the break. Actually, I lied. Let me spit out mine. You can tell me what you think about it after the break. There was some news. I don't know if you saw it yesterday, Steele, because there's a lot going on, and we'll cover that on tomorrow's episode, by the way. Betting breakdowns coming back in full swing on tomorrow's episode, so don't miss that. Thatcher Demko is out for at least another 3 to 4 weeks. They're aiming him back for November. I mentioned this on yesterday's episode talking about the Pacific Division. The Vancouver Canucks are in trouble without Thatcher Demko. That's not a bold take, but here it is, and here's my bold prediction for this season. Thatcher Demko's days as a surefire number 1 are done. This is a player and an injury that is going to be very difficult for him to play through. And the second that I hear experts in hockey that know a lot more than I do say he will never be back to 100%, he'll have to play through it and manage it, I'm reading into this perhaps more than I should be, Steele, but I'm worried. And with Thatcher Demko having multiple serious injuries already to this point in his career, I think this might be accurate sooner than later. So Thatcher Demko will not be a surefire number 1 goaltender in this league this year. And that's not necessarily his fault, but it's still a fact. And fantasy GMs out there who drafted Demko or are invested in this Vancouver Canucks team, good luck this season because it's going to take some maneuvering. But tap into Waiver Wire Mondays, and we'll help you maneuver those. But Steele, Demko, he's shaky right now, in my opinion, and his days as a number 1 are numbered.
Hey, Arthur Shelov's out there on the waiver wire. He's been taken in our draft, so I think you might be onto something. Look, this is something he's going to have to battle through game in and game out, and the risk of injury is just up there. It's it's not as rare for him to get injured like we've seen in the past. So if this is something that he's got to battle through every single game, I mean, that's a pretty good prediction right there. And I'll continue that after we come back from the break.
Giddy up, my friends, and thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. You never want a stressful ticket buying experience, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy, and that's why you're going to download the Game Time app today. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets today with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us. Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. And Flip, I think you're right. I think Thatcher Demko, especially when it comes to his fantasy value, you got to take that into consideration about the load management that this team is going to have him on, and making sure that they're not overusing him when they've got Artur Shilovs, or they potentially have somebody else who can come in and take those times in those games where they're facing maybe some bottom tier teams, so they're not overworking him and overworking the injury that he has in his legs or his knees. But yeah, I could see that for his fantasy value. Number 3, my third bold prediction for this upcoming season. I'm not really sure if it's a bold prediction, but I'm going to go with it anyway because I think it is. I've got Nathan McKinnon repeating another 140-point season with another 100 with his first. Sorry, not another. I've got Nathan McKinnon repeating 140-point season, but this time he's going to hit 100 assists on the year, just like McDavid and Kucherov did last year. I think you know how I feel about Nathan McKinnon. I think he could even easily be taken number 1 ahead of Connor McDavid in some formats, in some different fantasy leagues. I think he's right there as the best player, if not the best player in the National Hockey League, as he played last year and as he demonstrated to us. I see Nathan McKinnon again getting over 100 plus points, triple digits, obviously, but I think he's going to get back to 140 points. And this time he's going to get 100 assists this season because he's going to have to be dishing. He's going to have to be playmaking. Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, Nichushkin coming into the lineup potentially at the start of November. Arturi Lehkonen still on the injury, but he'll be back in the lineup soon, hopefully for this Avalanche organization. But I think Nathan McKinnon is going to have another monster season.
What's intriguing too, Steele, and, I agree with you on this one. I like it too. 89 assists last year. I could see 140 points back to back. We got to start paying attention on some special performances really happening here. And look, when I look at the Colorado Avalanche, and we haven't talked a ton about Casey Middlestat, I think you brought him up a couple of points. Now he's kind of entrenched in that top 6. I believe he's going to get some looks on that top power play unit. Just to spin a quick fantasy angle here, don't sleep on Casey Middlestat, because if he even catches a little bit of a look on the top power play unit, or they mix him around for whatever reason, that is a name that is going to be attractive, definitely on the waiver wire if he wasn't drafted. Let me hit you with this one, Steele, from West Coast to East Coast. And we've brought this up a little bit. I believe we had them up to the 2 spot in our Metro Division preview. I'm going to double down and up them one more spot. The New Jersey Devils are so good that they take that Metro Division this year, Steele. I don't know about after that, because I'm not going to get crazy. I want these to be bold predictions, not stupid ones, because I do think once this team is complete, I know Brett Pesce is still recovering from, I think he had off-season surgery, and I'm not trying to put the be-all and end-all of this season on Brett Pesce, but when this team is complete, full, top to bottom, Allen behind Markstrom, all the pieces on the blue line, healthy Luke Hughes in a couple of weeks. Once I see that, and we might not be thinking it's so bold, but I'm going to go out there and say it anyway, Steele. This New Jersey Devils team is going to be a force to be reckoned with, so I'm spitting it out. They are the 2024-25 Metro Division winners, and they just slid into the favorites on FanDuel to do just that at plus 200. Rangers plus 270, along with the Canes at plus 270. So again, maybe not as bold as I predicted. However, Devils, they're going to be heard from before this season is out. You're on mute, brother.
Hey, we said
He's
once a
back.
week. Once a week.
I feel
Hey,
good now. I
look,
feel like that's a good betting omen for tomorrow. So we'll
that
get
is a
after
good
it.
betting omen for sure. Look, the New Jersey Devils start off 2-0 on the season in the Global Series against the
Playing the
Buffalo
parade, baby.
Sabres. So plan the parade for them. They might as well just take it away
Yeah.
right now. Look, for me, I told you I was going to circle back to the Nashville Predators, and I'm going back with with another point prediction. This time, I'm going with Roman Josi. Roman Josi, he's going to win the Norris Trophy, and he's going to produce his first 100-point season. This is going to be the
this
year for
is
the
a bold one. I like it.
This is a bold one. This is the year for the Nashville Predators. They're going all in with these top guys. They bring in Stanley Cup champion players. Roman Josi, his fantasy value to me has never been higher. I know he's 34 years old. He just put up an 85-point season in 82 games last year, over 250 shots, over 151 blocks. His fantasy value is at peak high right now, especially with Marchessault and Stamkos in the lineup. I think he's going to do phenomenal things for this team and really get the playmaking and the quarterbacking on the power play going like we've seen him do throughout his entire NHL career. Roman Josi, another Norris Trophy, and first 100-point season in the National Hockey League.
I like it. However, it's going to contradict with my next bold prediction. So, look, I love that you're reading into the Nashville Predators as much as you are, and it makes a lot of sense. You're not the only one. I need to see them on the ice before I get overly excited. However, I totally understand where you're coming from, but I think the hype is beyond hype with the Edmonton Oilers, and I'm looking at their number one rear guard in Evan Bouchard to take the Norris Trophy. And let me explain why. Fantasy value, we've been all over this. We know he's a darling. I believe I got him in the second round in one of our leagues. Evan Bouchard, he's there. Last year, 105 block shots, 71 hits. Yeah, we love the 82-point steal. The man also chipped in with 32 penalty minutes, 220 shots on net. I think that's going to continue to rise. And then he just continued that in the postseason by being an absolute stud. He was right up there at the top in terms of playoff points. I'm struggling to bring up his numbers. There it is right there. All that matters is, he put up 32 points in 25 games to roll into this season, ready to ride, and I'll bring up his odds for the Norris. Cale Makar plus 230 makes sense. Adam Fox plus 600 along with Quinn Hughes makes sense. Your boy, by the way, right after Bouchard at plus 1,200 and at Bouchard at plus 750. So there is some method to the madness here. I just think with those additions up front that we've talked about at length, and we don't need to rehash these angles with Skinner and Arvidsson, another wrinkle has been added to this look for the Edmonton Oilers, and that's going to mean even bigger things for Evan Bouchard. Speaking of triple digits, that guy's got triple digits points written all over him, so maybe I should have read the tea leaves with you a little bit. Bouchard is the upcoming Norris Trophy winner. Again, I could see him leading D-men in points, so maybe I should have just put that together as another spice to the level. However, Bouchard, Norris Trophy, upcoming.
I love that. I absolutely love that. We're going with two guys from the Western Conference, Evan Bouchard and Roman Josi, to both break 100 points for the first time, as well as win the Norris Trophy. So that's going to be one I'm looking forward to as you and I battle out this season. Yeah. And we'll get to our top bold prediction after the break. So much more upcoming this week. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. And thank you so much for making, again, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip, and I appreciate all that love and support you show us. Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Flip, I'm just going to get right down to it. This is the boldest prediction. This is a little bit biased. This is me being a fan right now.
Okay.
But it could also happen. Okay. I'm just going to come out and say it. Toronto Maple Leafs, they're going to win the Stanley Cup this season.
Oh, you did do it. You did it.
Toronto Maple Leafs are going to win the Stanley Cup this season. They bring in Craig Berube. He's got them going in the preseason. The physicality, the different mindset that I've seen already has been huge. Big game tonight against the Montreal Canadiens in Montreal. But look, this is a different lineup. They've got the skill in the making. John Tavares, Mitch Marner, Auston Matthews, Nylander in that top 6 group. Robertson has shown in the preseason that he's got that goal scoring touch and he can have a little bit of consistency. I want to see it in the regular season. Matthew Nyes, we like. Max Domi, we like. Max Pacioretty, I like. Steven Lorentz, Ryan Reeves, David Camp making up that bottom line I like as well. They bring in guys like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Jake McCabe again, Chris Tanev, guys who are going to bring the boom, put their body on the line, block all those shots. It really does depend on the goaltending of Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll, but I think one of them can get hot in the postseason and just ride it all the way down to the Stanley Cup Finals and take that championship. So for me, Maple Leafs win the cup this year.
I'm ready to get hurt all over again, Mr. Roden. And look, we're recording early these days, but I'm already fired up and I'm hot under the collar when you're throwing out these bold predictions, and I appreciate it because I think for the most part we were pretty tame with our bold predictions this season.
Yes, we were.
And this one is the opposite. That's right out the window. However, you're not the only one who's throwing out the Leafs in the cup over the last couple of days. There's been guys who have a lot more time in the NHL than you and I do saying very similar things. And look, I love Joseph Woll. You and I have spoken about this. Even though the focus is off on your camera, I think you're in focus a little bit on this take because this is the best blue line that they've had in 10 seasons. Does that mean a Stanley Cup is coming right into the building? No, it definitely does not. But I think they have what it takes to at least be in consideration and in the mix. And again, we're not the only one throwing that at the board. And I almost don't even want to spit out my last bold prediction because it's pretty boring. But the Toronto Maple Leafs are still going to have to exercise the demons. The narratives around this squad are so exhausted, so played out that I'm not even going to get into it. I'm just going to say, let's revisit this angle in April. Everyone knows how hardcore of a Leafs fan I am, and I try and check that at the door on this podcast, so I hear it a lot. Flip, what are the Leafs going to do? Flip, it's at the Cup. Flip, what's happening? I say, talk to me in April, and we'll figure it out. So I'll do the same with you. I appreciate you having the cojones to come on this show and say they win the Cup. Look, Jesper Wallstedt, to me, and when I look at this Minnesota team, you brought up Kirill Kaprizov, and I came on the start of this, quote unquote fantasy season talking about Philip Gustafsson and how I think he's a sneaky good goaltender. I still think he is, but I think he's going to lose his starting job this year to Jesper Wallstedt. I said Thatcher Demko's in trouble. I think Philip Gustafsson's in trouble for a whole different reason. I think this Minnesota franchise wants Jesper Wallstedt to be that guy. Last year in Iowa for the AHL affiliate, 22-19-4 doesn't jump off the page. 9-10 save percentage makes me feel good. 2.70 goals against in the AHL makes me feel good. Couple of shutties as well. It's what I've seen from him. He looks calm. He's 21 years old. I think he's going to oust his fellow Swede, his fellow countrymen this season, Steele. And by the end of it, you're going to see Jesper Wallstedt as that number one guy. So fantasy-wise, you might want to flick on that little flag and have him monitored for most of this year. The second they start giving him a solid look, I think they just signed him to a 2-year.
They did.
Like 2.2. So there you go. They're going to give him a look at some point this season, and it might be sooner than later should the team or Gustafsson struggle. I know they still have Flower in there, but what a better time to bring him in and let Flower, I think he's on his last year of his contract. Yeah. Let him tutelage this kid a little bit, take him under the old wing or the pedal, however you want to say it. Wallstedt going to be the number one goalie for the Minnesota Wild before all is said and done this season.
Look, I do want Gustafsson to have success in the NHL, but for me as a Wild fan, I don't care who's in the crease as long as they're getting the job done and this team's going in the right direction and potentially going to be in the postseason again. Doesn't matter to me. So I'd love to see Jesper Wallstedt in there, but I do want Gustafsson to have a successful NHL career.
Me too. I own him in a league or two.
Yeah, I don't want him to, I wish him all the best. I want him to have success. And again, for me as a Wild fan, outside of that, I just want somebody to get the job done and somebody that can be consistent and get this Wild back into the postseason. That's the bold predictions from both Flip and I. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. The descriptions or the link is in the description below. You don't have to search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your bets this upcoming season, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.